Hello, everyone. How's it going? How are people? How's everyone doing? Hello. Okay, welcome to part 3 of interview like React JS and JavaScript style questions. We are in, as I said, like part 3. So we have done session 1 and session 2. At the end of session 1, we had done some basic JavaScript. At the end of session 2, we had focused a lot on closures and also debugging, adding debuggers and checking out things uh, on like where to add debuggers, where to see stuff, in the DOM, like not in the DOM, sorry, where to see stuff in the browser, where the variables are, where uh, things get rendered, re-rendered, how variables close over other variables, set timeout. Though I think towards the end of it, I couldn't figure out where the set timeout is shown in the browser. Uh, though after reading a bit about it, I think it's very difficult to find that unless we actually start our server in some like we start our file in a Node.js with debugger enabled and stuff like that. So I'm not going to focus on that. Okay. Also, everything that we did has been committed. I did make a commit like 10 minutes ago. Sorry about that. I forgotten yesterday, like not forgotten, but more like I had to make some other changes, so missed out on committing everything that we had done by the end of session 2. Okay, with that out of our way, let me share the check-in link while I give a quick recap of what we are doing for folks who are joining me for the very first time directly for session 3. Welcome. My name is Utkarsh, but I prefer to go by UT. That's how everyone knows me. Then we are doing some interview style questions where we are learning. Not I would not say learning JavaScript because it's not beginner level. It's more like JavaScript, but you have to go into slightly more details of it and kind of practice out in terms of uh, what could be asked during the interview and why certain things happen the way they happen. So we did like in session 1 and session 2 we focused solely on JavaScript. Now in session 3, which is right now, and in session 4, which is right after this one, we will focus on React. We will have React, and one of the what's the word most important questions will be answered, like when does React re-render. And we'll like basically go through React. We'll understand React behaviors, some React questions, and we'll try to kind of see it in action, see it live, working or not working, then understanding what happens, what doesn't happen, why it does certain things in a certain way. And once again, I think one of the most important thing is that we are not learning React from scratch. This is aimed at audience which knows a bit of React already. So this won't be a beginner level thing. I won't be explaining too much in detail about what is React, how it works, how props created, what's like component, so on and so forth. So I will not be focusing on that. But I've done some videos on basics of React in like other streams, and you can find all those videos on the Major League Hacking YouTube channel. So I think I'll say, yeah, that would be the perfect place to find a lot of details. Okay, cool. I guess that's it. That's a recap of everything. Now, before we get into writing React code, I want to do some quick fires, and also the check-in link is in the chat, so please do check in. Helps me, helps MLH. Okay, so quick fire basically is about some questions that would be really nice to know slash understand, and I guess majorly I would say a recap of JavaScript. Yes, so the quick fire is aimed at some recap of JavaScript so that Like, yesterday, whatever we did, do you remember or do you not remember? So let's get into it. Ah, this is the other way around. Okay, perfect. Okay, so quick fire one. There is let a equals to 1, let b equals to a plus plus, console.log a comma b. Okay, now my question to you all is, what will happen when I run this? Okay, I'll wait for a couple of seconds in, like, for answers in the chat, but uh, if I don't receive any answers, I'll just run this and then we can quickly check what it will return. Okay, so I have very simply one variable which is set to 1. B is kind of incrementing based on like A, and then we are console logging both of them. What will it print? That is the question. Uh, let's hit enter and find out, since I don't have any answers in the chat yet. It prints 2 comma 1, where A is 2, B is 1, but B was A plus plus. Perfect. I do have one answer, but unfortunately, that's not how it's working. Okay, let's figure out what's happening here. So A equals to 1, B equals to A plus plus, which means that it is going to return before the increment happens. Okay, so B becomes 1 before A becomes 2. Okay, and that's why we would end up in this not weird, but in this situation. So A increments later, but B gets the value of A before A increments. But if I do a pre-increment, which means plus plus of A and then B, then both of them are 2 and 2. Okay, because by the time we hit this line, we are saying like A equals to 1, fine. Then B is plus plus A, which means increment first, then assign to A, or like A gets the value of 2 and then assign it to B. So now both of them are 2 comma 2. Okay, so post increment, pre increment, and that makes a difference of when the value like changes before like B actually gets it, when the variable B gets it. And you can very simply, if you want, you can add a debugger. We saw how to add one yesterday. Okay, you can add a debugger right here and then try to run it, and it will kind of pause at that point. We will see that, okay, as per the script, A is 2, B is 1. Okay, and that's it. You can also, if you want, you can add a debugger before this line. Wrong place. Okay, A is 1, B has value unavailable. Then I step over, it goes to like A is changed to 2, but B got the value of 1, like it got assigned 1 beforehand, and then we went to console.log, and that's it. Okay, so that was the first quick fire question. Now let's move on to the next one. Okay, we learned these concepts yesterday. Let's quickly see. 5 in string minus 3, and 5 in string plus 3, and 5 in string minus 3. What will we expect? Let's start with this first one. Uh, 5 in string minus 3. What will this give? Okay, 2. Okay, I got one answer which says 2. Okay, and then 5 in string plus 3. What will that give us? And even the last one. Like, let's get answers for both of these. Okay, perfect. Okay, 2 people are saying 2 for the first one. Uh, and what about the next two questions? Any answers for those? 53. Okay, 53 for the second one. Okay, and the last one. Okay, I'll hit enter and let's see what it prints. Okay, so I got the answer right then. No worries. Okay, so 5 are in string minus 3. So JavaScript in this case, it's going to try to compare, not compare, convert the string because of a mathematical operation. It's going to convert the string part to a number and then do the mathematical operation. Okay. Uh, in case of this one, where a concatenation is possible, because the plus operator add acts as a summing operator, but at the same time, it also allows combining two strings. So whenever there is a plus operator, anything that is not a string gets converted to a string, and then they are concatenated. Okay, so they're not summed; they are concatenated. Strings are joined together. Now, in case of this last one, okay, there are two minus symbols, and the way this is going to work is like, you can think that it's going to be very similar to, first we have 5 in string, okay, and then this minus 3 is kind of in this bracket. Okay, and now there is a single minus, and we know that whenever there is a mathematical operation, the string is kind of parsed to a number. So this becomes 5. Okay, so now we end up with 5 minus of minus 3. Some simple math tells us that minus of minus is basically plus. Okay, and here this becomes 5 plus 3, and that becomes 8. Okay, so the double minus is subtraction of a negative. Okay, subtraction of a negative. The space makes all the difference. It's not decrement. Okay, so we had a decrement operator. So it's not that. It's more like the space makes it slightly different. Okay, uh, basically subtraction. That's what is happening here. Uh, this one. Now this is going to be an interesting one. Now, please don't run it, but just think of it and tell me what would be the answer for the first one and what would be the answer for the second one. Okay, let's run this. So we have the first one runs like returns true. Second one returns false. Okay, so second console log returns false. So what's happening here? Okay, so every expression is always evaluated from left to right. Okay, so the way this will evaluate is, let's take the first one. It's first going to evaluate 1 less than 2. Okay, and it will say yes, this is a true the statement. Now we end up with true less than 3, and that returns true. Okay, why? Because true less than 3, now you can imagine the way it would work is true becomes 1, and 1 less than 3 becomes true again. And that's why we end up with a true here in the first one. In the first one, we end up with a true, because true is like num is going to be 1. Now let's try the next one. What's happening in the next one? So console.log 3 greater than 2. This returns true, and then we have true greater than 1. Okay, true becomes 1. So 1 greater than 1 is going to be false. Okay, so it's it looks like if you read this in mathematical format, like don't think of it as JavaScript, think of it as math, then this seems to be a true statement, but we end up with the false, because JavaScript doesn't chain the comparison. Okay, it evaluates from left side to then right side, And then if this evaluation is truthy, then we end up with this 3 greater than 2 is going to be true, true greater than 1, true becomes 1, and then 1 greater than 1 returns false. Okay, they're equal, not greater. So do you think, I guess now the question for you all is this going to be truthy or falsy? Or like, will it return true or false? Let's try it out. That returns false as well. And then the question is why? And if I make it double equals, do you think now will it return true or false? Okay, so perfect. This is the perfect answer. And yesterday we focused on it. Whenever we are doing uh, exactly equals, in that case, we check if the type of both sides, x and y, are going to be of the same data type. If they are not of the same data type, then it's immediately returned as false. But when we do a loose comparison, in that case, we have to follow what the ECMAScript guidelines say. Like one side will become a number, and then you try to compare. If they are equal, then yes, sure, it's true. Okay. So loose equality versus strict equality makes a lot of difference, because in strict equality, we check the type. The type on the left hand side is Boolean. The type on the right hand side is a number. And if you don't have the same data type, then yes, it's going to be a false. Yes, perfect. Yep. Awesome. I am glad that things are actually looking good and people are actually understanding, or hopefully, maybe you already know, and everything that I did was waste. But I'm going to take the former, which is we did some awesome job yesterday and everyone understood everything. Okay. Uh, I don't think we focused on this, but array.sort. Okay, this is going to be a tricky one. What will we return? And how does that happen? I guess that's also one of the questions. Okay. So this is going to return 1, 10, 2, 3, 8, 9. Why? Okay. So this is because array.sort without a comparator sorts by string conversion. Okay. Yes. So normal sorting in JavaScript is basically string comparison. Okay. So it converts every number to a string. Now we have 1 and 10 as a string. So actually, if I go back to this same question and I try to add a string around all of them, we will end up with a very similar looking output. Okay, just with the strings. And that's what's happening. Okay. So array.sort without a comparator, which means without comparing the first value to second value, it is basically doing a string comparison, a string conversion, and then it goes like, okay, now I am trying to sort strings, and 1 and 1 0. Okay, if I have to sort these two strings, in that case I need to know that like, hmm, so this is what's happening. 10 of string greater than 2 of string, that is false. And that's why 10 of string comes before the string of 2. That is what happens when you do array.sort without any comparison. So you're literally kind of comparing two strings. But then, of course, you have to, if you want to sort them by numerical value, then you have to give a comparison function. how do you want to compare the two numbers? So in this case, we can basically say that take the two numbers a and b. Okay, we're giving them some variables, and return a minus b, which is nothing but a comparison function saying that the first number and second number, check which one is greater, and then we end up with 1 2 3 8 9 and 10. Okay, and then the final one is going to be this question. Now my question is a and square bracket b. Okay, what will this return? Will this return hello, or will this return world? Okay, this is the most tricky one. What's happening here and why, and what's going on? So if I have to think of it, like if I have to explain it, not think of it, if I have to explain it, the first thing is that technically, if A is an object, there is no key inside it. B is another object. A of B, okay, you're trying to assign it, that is fine. But what you are doing is that, what you need to know that the object keys must be strings, okay? And that's where the whole world kind of goes a bit of crazy. Like what's going on? Why do they need to be string? How is this even working? So let's see if we can add some debugger. Okay, let's see if I can kind of quickly do this with console logs. Let me just add some console logs. 1 second. Okay. Uh, so what's happening here? Uh, okay, so I do have some answers here. Yes. Okay. World, world, world. Yeah, but the question is like, why does that work, and how does that work? How is like okay? Now, I guess the main thing that I want to test here is that if I remove all of this, reload, and I try to do a console.log of a. Okay, if I try to do a console.log of a, what do I end up with? I end up with an empty object. But if I expand it, the key is object object, the value is world. Okay, let's try that again, but let's remove this bit because we have reference to it. It's nothing. Currently, it's empty. Now, when I try to do the same thing, and I try to do console.log of B, and I try to do a console.log of C, what do I end up with? Console.log of A is currently an empty object. Console.log of B is a key value, which is what we have assigned it. And C is also empty object. Cool. So now we know like what we got in terms of A, B, and C. Then the next part of it was that I assign A square bracket B equals to hello. So what will be A after this assignment? What will be A after this assignment? We are saying that inside, like for this object A, create a key called as B, or take B, which is present here, and give it the value of hello. So now if I hit enter, I get object and then hello. So the key is currently an object. What happened here and why did this happen? So what it is doing internally, it's trying to convert B dot to string. Okay, it's trying to take this particular object B and it tries to convert it to string, because the key of an in JavaScript of an object needs to be string. So as you can see, b.toString is object. So it tries to convert this bit to string and it becomes object because it's not able to understand, like in the specification you can see that like an object trying to convert to a string returns object. Okay, so at that point we have said that okay, the key refers to this one, which you tried to convert to a string and it became object, and the value is going to be hello. Now what was the next step that we did? Then we said that okay, after this conversion, let's take C and assign it to world. Okay, so now I have another key C, which I'm going to, like in A, for the key C, the value should be world. Now again, c.toString will return me object. And now what we are saying is that I have two keys which have the exact same name, object. So if I try to do console.log of A of B, where the key was the same, so this was the previous key, and when we try to assign C, even that gave or returned the exact same key. Okay, and in JavaScript, in an object, one key, like a key has to be a unique parameter. You cannot assign the same like you cannot assign two different values to the same key, or like you cannot have two keys which look exactly the same. Okay, after string comparison, or not comparison, conversion, and that is why A of B becomes world. Now if you have to simply understand it without all these constraints, let's think that A was an empty object, and I said A of string 1 is going to be hello, and A of string 1 is going to be world. Oops. uh, A of string 1 is going to be the word hello, and A of, and then let's console.log it. So console.log A, and then A of, and okay, let's just hit enter. So I have a key 1 and the value is hello. Now I try to do A of 1 as world, and then I try to do console.log of A. I'm going to just wrap it in Okay. So now A has the same key which you're converting to the word, like which you are assigning the value, sorry, of world. And that's why this previous value gets overwritten. And since that is overwritten now, we end up with like a like a of this particular key set to world. And that is exactly what's happening in our question. So it tries to convert this key to a string, which returns object object, which is like we don't care what that is, but what all we care is we end up with the exact same, not a dot to string, sorry, b dot to string and c dot to string. Okay, we end up with exactly the same key or the same looking key in terms of string, and that is why a of b in our question, I at the end of it, returns us world rather than hello, even though we assigned it hello. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Any questions as to like why this returns, like this whole thing actually ends up returning the word world rather than returning the word hello? Because of all these key parameters, like or keys returning the same string. Okay, I am not getting any response, so I presume that everything was understood and there are no questions of what happened in this whole situation. And that's the end of our quick fire. Okay, I don't think I have to push anything. Everything should be okay. Perfect. Okay, so all of this has been pushed already to GitHub. So if you go over to GitHub, then you will find all these snippets of code. I did make a small mistake. So this 102 and 103, they should have been in session 2 folder, but I mistakenly put them in session 1 folder. Apologies about that. So you can always go back to these questions to kind of understand what's going on. I still haven't used AI to enhance it. Uh, maybe today. Maybe today. Cool. So that's about JavaScript. I hope that had been fun in understanding and actually understanding what goes underneath rather than just like kind of remembering, yes, this is what we are going to end up with. You now understand, okay, what does JavaScript do when we tell it to assign a value to a particular key? It converts the key to a string and it tries to kind of assign it a value. But if it ends up with two same keys, string like string wise they are exactly the same keys, then of course it will override the value of the previously assigned. It will override the value of that key because it thinks, okay, the user is asking me to change the value of the same key. Okay, and that's how we end up with this whole situation. And yeah, there's nothing else to say. Now let's move on to the React bit. Okay, uh, I guess the first question that I have for you all is, when does React re-render? Or when does React render? Not re-render. When does React render? And to answer these questions, we will have these session 3 and session 4 folders. So in session 3 folder, this is a very simple Vite project with TypeScript, Vite TypeScript project. There is nothing much inside here. So if I actually try and go, okay, let me cd into the session 3 folder and I do npm run dev. Okay, 5173. It's a very simple page. Okay, nothing much going on here. and this is what we will use for everything. So I have a main.tsx. I am not using the strict mode because strict mode in development mode does double rendering, which can be confusing. So I don't want to do that, and that is why I've kind of disabled the strict mode in React. There is an app.tsx with just some like simple h1 tag. There is a very simple css uh, right now, and yeah, everything that came with like starting this project. Okay, creating this project. I think maybe one change in index.html to change the title to session 3, and that's it. So yeah, this is a very simple React project, kind of done by following veet.dev. All I did was it is yeah, this one. Okay, all I did was this, except that instead of calling it like using the template view, I used the template of react-ts. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so now this will be our main playground, and everything that I do will be inside. I will create a folder here. Du- 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 du. Okay, and inside this, I will create some components. So I'm going to create session 3a1.tsx, some very simple projects, some very simple components. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get started. The first question, as I asked, is when does React render a component? Okay, and the most popular answer, which I would say is correct, it's just slightly incomplete and can be wrong depending on who is interviewing you or asking you this question. So the most common answer, and this was the answer that even I used to give, was React renders when state or prop change and it updates the DOM. That is the most common answer that we get. But actually, that's not the case. Okay, React may update, uh, like in terms of React rendering, it does not mean the DOM has to update. Okay, there are three phases that actually happen underneath. There is the trigger phase, which means something causes a render, which can be like, okay, if the component mounts for the very first time, or a parent re-renders, or there is a set state change called which tries to update the state. So anything that causes slightly, as I said, state or prop change will cause a trigger. Then in the render phase, so there's a trigger phase which causes some kind of action. Then there comes the render phase, which is React will call the component. It will say, okay, the component is going to return JSX. And in this render phase, it does not touch the DOM. All it does, it compares what was the previous or the old value of this object and compares it with the new value of the object. Okay, so there is a comparison going on. Old value of the object, new value of the object. So we have trigger phase where an action happens, some sort of action, initial mount, set state, parent re-render or render, whatever you say it, trigger phase. Then render phase where React will call the component that may have like which will return an object, because JSX at the end of the day is nothing but objects. Okay, so it gets the new object. Then React will compare the old object with the new object, and this is, you can say, it's like kind of a difference between or diffing phase. Okay, so render phase, and then finally comes the commit phase. So The parts of that object which have changed, they will be updated, and only that will change the DOM. Okay, so there's trigger phase, render phase, and commit phase, and you can actually find all of these details on their uh, documentation, which I kind of never bothered to learn over. And there we go. And here's the link for you in the chat as well. So what is rendering? Triggering a render, rendering the component, and then commit phase, where committing to the DOM. Okay, and it talks in detail about it. Now let's see it in action. Okay, so this one is more like, let's do some action before I ask you interview style question. Let's see this in action and understand what's going to happen here, or how it works out for us. So I am going to write some quick code and we will see it out. Okay. Okay. What I don't want is this. I know that I have a class name of primary because I created it. So just setting the same count, and in this case, all I'm going to do is set count is set to the same value count. Okay, so now I have a p tag where the count will be displayed. I have my first button which increments by one. Okay, now let's use this component in our app.tsx. So I'm going to say session 3a, and there we go. Now let's go over to our project, and I am going to do a hard refresh, and let's see. So let me clear everything, do a quick reload. So first I see component rendered. Also, I'm going to switch on the time so that you can also see the time when things happen, which will help us kind of differentiate when something was triggered. So at 12:45 06 156 component rendered. I have my +1 button and I have the set same value button. Okay. Now if I click on the set same value, what will be printed? That is my question to you all. If I click on the set same value button, what is going to be printed in the console and what will be the value here? Any guesses? Okay. So I have one answer, nothing in the console, and the value I presume we would say is going to remain 0. Let's click and find out. I click on it. I am clicking on it. Okay. And nothing actually happens. Okay. Nothing is happening, and there's nothing in the console, and this value is not changing. I'm now going to click on the +1. Component rendered, value changes to 1. +1, component rendered, value changes to 2. Now I'm going to click on the set same value once more. Component rendered, the value is still the same. And I click on it again, not happening. Nothing's happening. So what is going on? So let's start by the easy bit, which is when the component has initially mounted. When the component has initially mounted, uh, then in that case, everything is run, which means this console.log statement is run because React is like, okay, I am doing the first render. There is nothing uh, already printed. This is the first time I am actually looking at this component. So I'm going to run every part of code that I see. And this is how we end up with this component rendered console.log. Then after that first render, I click on the set same value and nothing is rendered. Okay, nothing changes because React is like, okay, the user has clicked on this button, but the original object or like the previous object and the new object, they look exactly the same. So I don't need to change anything in the DOM, which means I don't need to do a re-render of anything. And that's how we have nothing. Then I go on the +1, which goes like, okay, the user has now clicked on +1, which updates the state. Okay, so the count value is going to change by 1. It's going to increment by 1. So the state has been updated. So I am going to call this component rendered, and then the value updates to 1. Then click on it again, component rendered, value updates to 2. Then I click on the set same value. Okay. Now React kind of bails out on the subsequent calls with the same value, but it may, and most like we see actually that it does uh, render once more just to verify. Okay. So after this, if I click on this set same value again and again and again, I will not see anything changing because, well, technically nothing has changed. Okay. It's not going to uh, do anything or cause this to render. But after I click on +1, component rendered, 1249, 14, 696, then I click on set same value, React will render once, but after this, subsequent renders will not happen. Okay. So render, it means that the React is calling a function, but it does not mean that DOM needs changing. React will render your component and decide like, okay, nothing needs to change in the DOM, so I'm not going to do anything. Uh, on every render, if there is a console log like right here, on every render, this is going to run, and uh, that's how you can actually tell that okay, something has been rendered or something is not rendering. Okay. Same question. Now I click on the set same value. What's going to happen? So I've done a hard refresh. So let me clear all of this. Empty cache and hard reload. So everything kind of starts fresh. So React will try to render the DOM for the very first time. And this is too slow. What's happening here? Okay. Component rendered. There's the first one. If I click on the set same value, what will I see? My question for you all. Okay, let's try it. Set same value clicked, nothing changed. Okay. Set same value clicked, nothing changed. The component rendered is not printing, which means my component is technically not changing. Because if there was a change, I would see component rendered again. So plus one clicked, component rendered. Plus one clicked, component rendered. Plus one clicked, component rendered. Set same value clicked, component rendered, but subsequently I don't see component rendered again and again. I do see the set same value clicked. So that's how I can prove that I am clicking it. But React is not changing the DOM. Okay. Another thing that I can do is if I show this, I click on the set same value. You don't see any highlights happening here. Okay. The speed tag is not highlighting. I click on plus one. You see there's a flash of P. This is when the DOM is actually updating. I click on set same value. Okay. There is a render, but DOM did not need changing. So React will not like is decided that okay, I don't need to change the DOM because the value remains the same. So it's smart around that point, but it did render the component. Subsequently, nothing needs changing. So you don't see any re-render. Plus one, P had a flash. Okay. So this is what we have learned slash remembered or slash understood, I hope. That rendered means that React will call your function. It does not mean that the DOM needs changing or has changed. Okay, perfect. So, any questions, anyone, on this part? And now you understand, like, if you are asked a question, when does React render? You have a proper mental picture. You try to set the same value, and there's nothing that's changed. Nothing's going to happen. You click on plus one. Any console log that is like in the component, it will tell you that okay, this has re-rendered. Okay, rendered or re-rendered, whatever. Cool. Let's go to the next question. Okay. The next question that I have for all of you is, does the child re-render in React when the parent re-renders? Also, I just saw a question here. I'm new here. What's happening here? So we are running some interview style questions of JavaScript and React. We are trying to visualize what actually happens uh, as like focus on React now in this session 3 and 4. Uh, I ask some questions, then we actually try to visualize it, see what's happening, kind of prove, not prove, but more like learn by experimenting, okay? Learning by experimentation. Feynman's best way of learning anything, I guess. Yeah. Okay, cool. Going back uh, to this. So, the question is, will a child re-render when the parent re-renders? Like, remember that React is smart in terms of whenever you don't need a re-render, it won't do a re-render. So, in this case, will a child re-render if the parent re-renders? Okay. So I'm going to create a child component. Yeah, finally. Okay. And let's call this. copy all of this. And I'll just say this is parent. Oh, you can also do something like this, by the way, a callback, which takes the previous value and update the next value. Okay, let's go to this one. We can delete this and we can call session 382. And let me put up the child right after the p tag. Okay, so spelling mistake, parent. And now let me do a hard refresh. Perfect. So parent rendered, child rendered. Question is, if I click on +1, will I see child rendered? Okay, let's try it out. I click on +1 clicked, parent rendered, child rendered. +1 clicked, parent rendered, child rendered. Set same value. Okay, set same value clicked, parent rendered, child did not render. Set same value clicked, and now we have this thing. So we remember that when the same value is set, that then React is smart that okay, I don't need to re-render anything, so that is fine. But when I click on +1, every time parent renders, child component renders. Okay, every time parent has a render, child will render. Okay, now that is one of the most important concepts, or it's like something that you need to understand or always need to know, that React will not check if the props of children have changed before re-rendering the children components. Okay, every time there is a parent re-render, it will re-render the whole sub tree, which means every child component inside the parent will re-render. Okay, so by default, all the children re-render. And now you may think that that's wasteful. Okay, because what if you have a parent app.tsx that re-renders? In that case, every child component, so session 382 will re-render, which will trigger a re-render of the child inside that if that has more children. So the multiple layers of like children is going to be re-rendered because the parent component app.tsx re-renders. Okay, but that's fine actually. You may think it's wasteful, but it's fine because rendering is cheap in a way. Okay, because during the rendering, it does not mean that there needs to be any update to the DOM or anything. All it is going to be like, okay, I need to compare, like call the function, compare the objects. Okay, but it's the part where the committing happens when the DOM actually has to update. That is the expensive part. And React tries to minimize that by like making a diff. But still, every time a parent re-renders, child components re-render. And that is one thing that we always need to know slash remember. Okay, and that is one of the, I would say, an important interview question that you might have. Okay, someone shows you a parent component and goes like, okay, I click on +1, will it cause any re-render of the child component? Yes, it will. Like, presume that there's this, like this button, the set same value button doesn't exist, so that it's easier to understand. You have a button which sets it to +1, parent will re-render, and the child component will also re-render. Let me remove this child after the button. Okay, perfect. Okay, every time parent re-renders, child will re-render. And then, I guess, the question is, how can we stop that? And we can stop it by using memo, but we'll come to that later. Okay. Uh, okay. Any questions, anyone, about this? About parent re-render, child re-render, like what happens in each of these phases? Okay. I'll take the silence as golden and presume that there is no question. Everyone has understood everything. And let's go on to the next one. Okay, now the next one is going to be very interesting. Like, like all of these are interesting in my opinion. Session SESSION 3A3.tsx. Mm, so I'm giving a hint already that this is going to be broken. But let's first understand what is broken, and then we'll try the fixed version of it. Const user, comma set user equals useState. So we have seen useState quite a few times now. That helps us to set the value, and I'm going to set it as mm, name and age. So an object. Okay, 15 years, comma, uh, comma. Perfect. I'm going to have a function called as birthday. I'm going to say user dot age is going to increment by 1. Then I call the set user to be the user, to set it to the user, and then console.log set age to user dot age. Okay. And now inside the return, I will have a div tag with a p tag. User dot name is user dot age, years old. And we'll have a button. I'm going to give it a class of primary, and on click we are going to call this function birthday, and we'll see birthday +1. Okay, I think this is fine, and let's call this in session 3a3, 3a3 from 3a3. Okay, so at the start, so nothing in console, so I'm just going to clear it. MLH is 15 years old, and if I click on the birthday button, will the age update on the screen? That's my question. And this is the code if you want to take a look at it. Let's go and see. I click on +1. It sets the age to 16, but my view doesn't update. I click on it again. Console updates, view doesn't update. Okay. So clicking on it updates the console, but the screen doesn't update. My question to you now is why? Okay. Here is the whole code. My question to you is why? If we have reached this function and we have reached this line where the value has updated, why is the screen not getting any update? Okay, I have one answer. It is child. It is a child. No, like we don't have any like child to 3A3. It, 3A3 is a child of app.tsx, but that's fine because well, we can see that the console is updating. So definitely like there is an update getting triggered, but we just don't see the actual value. Okay. So the answer is that this line is the culprit, or more like these two lines together are the culprit. Okay. So what's happening? So user.age plus equals to 1, it is basically mutating the same object in the memory. Okay. And set user of just this user, it's telling React that okay, you have update, like we are setting the user value to this value, but we are not telling it that there was a change, so we are giving it the same reference. Okay, so pass by value, pass by reference, if you have like heard about it, in terms of objects we are passing the same reference. So React compares the old state and new state, and since there is the same reference, React thinks okay, nothing has changed. Okay, since nothing has changed, there is no re-render. So if I do like rendered, okay, first time yes. After this, as you can see, there is no render happening because React is thinking that okay, you have given me an object, but the by reference, but you're not telling me that there is an update. React is going to compare it using something called as object.is. Okay, so you can quickly Google search that object.is JavaScript. Okay, it determines whether two values are the same value. Okay, so in terms of object, it's going to be like okay, I have a previous object, I have a new object. Are they the same one? Yes, React thinks yep, I have the same one, so it does not update anything. Okay, so to fix this, we can do it in multiple ways. So I'm going to copy my broken app and I'm going to create a fixed version of it. And I'm going to export the fixed version. Okay, so to fix it, we have multiple ways, as I said. One way would be like step one, spread over the existing user. So spread operator, it is going to create a new object. And then we can say that the age is nothing but the previous age. So user previous user dot age and plus one. So if I do this now, okay, And now I go here, clear, reload, rendered, +1 is happening. But now I'm setting it twice because of this line. So I'll need to comment that out. Okay. So render is happening and it is setting the age. There is a problem in console log, but we are going to ignore that bit for now. That's a separate question for later. Uh, but you do see that there is a render happening and things are actually updating now. Okay. 25, 26, 27. Cool. Okay, so that is one of the fixes, one of the ways to fix it. So what we need to do, so using the spread operator, we are creating a new object. A new object means there is a new reference, and if React sees a new reference to object, React sees a change, and whenever there is a change, in that case, we are telling it that, okay, you have to re-render. Whenever React re-renders, we see an updated value on the screen. Okay. And this is one of the most like found state bugs in React. Okay, so mutating or updating state. So whenever you have to update inside an object, you have to ensure that you are passing a new reference. Okay, there needs to be a new reference. Now one of the other popular ways, or the way that I would suggest, the way we actually did it just before, is by passing it a previous, okay, passing it a callback function. So what you're saying is take the previous state up, like spread over the previous state, and now update the age from the previous age to +1. Okay. So this I would say is like my preferred way of updating. A callback function where you take the previous value, spread over the previous value, and then update the parameter that you need to update the value of the key that you need to update, and that's it. I guess this is one of the better ways to kind of visualize it. Now +1 gives me the proper value. Okay. Now this I would say is a fixed version of it. There was the broken app version. Now there is a fixed version, fixed app. And we have had the problem of when I do a console.log here, it prints 20, screen says 21, and then there's the re-rendered. Okay. So this is a problem. And why is this a problem? What's happening? And if I move this outside, will this be resolved? Okay. Best way to understand is by doing it. And yes, it is resolved. So what happens inside this function versus what's happening here? Like what is the difference happening? We'll try and look at it in one of the like, I guess next questions. Not exactly next, but at some point. Okay. With respect to what's happening, why we are doing some stuff, how it's working, and what is going on. Okay. So some gotchas, some bugs that we have seen, and what happens. Okay. So whenever you have to set, and so what is the key takeaway from this question? The key takeaway from this question is that whenever you have to update an object in React, you're using set state to update an object, you need to pass it a new reference. Okay. Otherwise, React will think that I have received the exact same object by reference. The internal value has changed, but React doesn't know that. Okay. So it's like, okay, since I have no updates, I'm not going to re-render or render. Because remember, React renders whenever there is a state update. In terms of object, passing by reference, no state update. So no render. Okay. But if you And the two ways to fix it is by either like doing what was what we had done before, which was if I take the user object, okay, spread over the user object, and then set the state to be user dot age plus one. So this is one way to do it. Take the original object and do it. Or the other way, my preferred way, is a callback function where you take the previous object or the callback of what was the previous value, spread over the previous value, which is exactly same like this, and update the parameters that you need to update, which is exactly same like this, and React will take care of the re-render bits from there on. Okay, cool. So I guess that is everything that I wanted to cover in 3A. I can quickly. What's the ESLint way of ignoring? I forgot. Mm, anyways, I guess this is the perfect point to quickly commit all of these. 3A1, 3A2, and 3A3. And 3A1, 3A2. I'm just going to comment these out. Hmm, what do I need to do? I need to. What should be my commit message? I guess I'm questioning that. So this was like React basics, I would say. Okay, so session 3, all the questions should be available here. SRC session 3A 123. Perfect. Let's move on to the next one. So I'm going to create a new folder. Oh, I have created a B folder already. Okay, perfect. Nice. Some like vision, future vision. Okay, so for 3AB, I guess, let's see. What's the first question that I want to ask? Three B one, not 3AB. 3B1, RAFCE, and I am going to say const count, comma, set count. You might think that I'm like, I love count and counter, but like the reason is that with just a count, like counter, you can kind of understand everything. Okay, everything about React. So I'm going to have a new function handle click, and set count is going to be count plus one. So I've done it 3 times, and now in here I'll just print out the count, and of course I'm going to have a button to increment the count. So I'm going to have a class name of primary, and on click I'm going to call the handle click function, and plus 3. I don't need this. That's fine. And now let's go over to app.tsx and comment this out, comment this out, comment this out, and okay. So the question is, if I click this button, will the count go to 3? Anyone? Any comments? Any suggestions? Yes, no, maybe, possibly. Okay. Uh, I got an answer saying no, it will go to 1. Okay, let's try it out. I click on the plus 3 and it goes to 1. I click on the plus 3, goes to 2. Click on the plus 3, goes to 3. Click on the plus 3, goes to 4. Okay, so what's going on here and why? So count is 0 when the handle click function runs. Okay, now all these set counts are going to be updating the same value of 0 to 1. Okay, so what's and why? What's happening and why? So it takes a snapshot. React will take a snapshot, okay, or more like, let's say it takes this plain number, captures it, and it goes like, okay, I remember that the value of count is going to be 0, is 0. Now whenever we call the set count function, it is not changing mid function. Okay, so it is going to schedule a re-render with the new value, which it is like, okay, it was the previous value was 0, I'm going to kind of update it to like plus 1. So 0 plus 1 is going to be 1. I have 3 set count functions, and all of them, all of these calls are batched together, and only the last one actually wins. Okay, only the last count actually wins. The other two are technically just ignored. Okay, so how do we fix this? I guess we actually know how to fix it. Uh, but any suggestions in the chat of how we can fix it? Technically, I would say we did see how to fix it just a bit ago. I mean, this is one of the smartest, I would say, answer. Yes, if you want to update by 3, just do plus 3. Yes. But suppose you don't want to do that, then yes, this is the answer. Like pass the callback. Okay. And yep, we want to take the previous state and update based on that. Hmm. Okay. I'm trying to see if I can add a console log here. Give me 1 second. Just trying to, as I said, see if I can actually console log this. Okay, I can. I think I can add quick. hmm, Okay, let's try this. Uh, Render with count, comma, count, and you click, and inside handle click, finish handle click, and uh, CLG first set count, comma count, second, third. I guess this should work. Okay, clear all, reload, render with count 0. I click on the +3 inside handle click. First set count is 0, second set count is 0, third set count is 0. Finish handle click, render with count 1. Okay, updates by just 1. Then I click on it again, and there we go. Inside handle click, first set count 1, second set count 1, third set count 1. All of them are 1. And then it does the finish handle click, and it batches all of them together and goes like, okay, I just have to update it by 1. But the fix, as one of the users correctly pointed out, can just be passing a callback and updating based on the previous. Let's do that. I will say that take the previous value and update by +1. I'm going to copy this and paste it like a couple of times. Okay, render with count 0. Click on +3. Render with count, first set count 0, second set count 0, third set count 0. But then after that, it actually updates by 3. +3 again. First set count 3, second set count 3, third set count 3. And then it updates by actually directly 6. Okay. You see what's happening in this one? So while it's printing out that, okay, yes, this has not updated, uh, we still end up with 6. Okay, because in every part of it, okay, uh, what can I print which will give it an indication? Let me see. Let me see if this will work out well as first set count, second set count, third set count, in, in, in. Let's try this out. Not 100% sure if this one actually would work, but let's see. I click on +3. Okay, it does work. Okay, first set count in, second set count in, third set count, finish handle click, second set count in, third set count, render with count 3. Okay, yeah, batching is going to be very weird to visualize, but React does its job. First set count in, second set count in, first, second, third set count in, and this is not the in bit. It's third set count in, second set count in, first set count in, mm, finish, inside, render. Okay, I guess this should be better. Render with count 0. I click on +3 inside the handle click. Now we have reached inside this function. First set count in is set to 0. Okay, and that is like, okay, the previous value. Yes, technically it was 0 at this point. So yes, this is correct. Then we have to find the second set count in, which is takes the previous value, which was 0, but then at this point we returned it. We returned 0 plus 1, 1. So this is now 1. So second set count in should print 1, because, well, that is 1. Then we update it and return 1 plus 1 to 2. So the third set count in should have the previous value as 2, and this should be printing 2, and then we return 2 plus 1, which is 3. Okay, so I need to basically, if we can take this print one level up and do const a equals to previous plus 1, and then we print like a, and then return a, comma a, and finally the third one is equals to previous plus 1, return a, and previous comma a. Now this should be better. Click on +3, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, render with count 3. Okay, now you might notice that inside handle click, okay, and this ordering is a bit weird, a bit wonky, but that's how like React is going to batch up the updates. It takes things that it will kind of render together, and it goes like, okay, when I do the next render, I'm going to do all of these things together, and this kind of merge them together. So technically it's like, okay, the finish handle click has been called, which means we are outside of this function. Okay, but then the next two print happens because React is like, I will get to them when I get to them. Okay. Now in this case, when I click on it again, see the inside handle click and finish, and then the first set count in, second set count in, third set count in. Okay. Then click on it again, and here we go. So this tells you things about like React's batching strategies as to when it thinks it wants to do some stuff. And can I take this here? And then these are happening. Okay. Any questions, anyone? Like, hopefully, I've helped you visualize what parts of code are run when. The batching one could be slightly a bit like understanding issue. Okay. Like, the first set count in happens, and then these three statements are printed, and then this happens. But after every consecutive updates thereafter, you may see that, okay, all the set ones are actually happening together technically, like always seem to happen together, but all the other console logs are happening like inside, and then these all the batching of set count happens later. Okay, but on the first render, that's not the case. The first set count in happens first, and then everything else happens. Okay, so does this in terms of the console log make sense of what's going on? What's the previous value, what's the next value, when it's happening, when it's rendering, what was the issue with the previous version, and what is happening in the next version? Are you able to visualize that whole part? Or in any questions, anyone? I guess that's the easiest way to ask. Any questions, anyone? Okay, so there is a question: is there a time when we want to update based on previous state but shouldn't use a callback, or should we always use a callback to mutate based on previous state? Always use callback to mutate based on the previous state, as simplest answer. Why? Because you don't want to update your previous state. You want to create a new object with a new reference, so that you are telling your variable to point at a new object or new value, new variable. Not new variable, sorry, new value. Okay, new object. Because updating previous, like updating the original object, is always going to cause a lot of bugs. Okay, it's always going to cause a lot of bugs, and so it's like it becomes harder, in my opinion, when you update the original object, and also it may lead to a lot of bugs that you did not intend. Okay, so suppose you are getting data from API, and you're storing it in a particular object, in a particular, like in some particular object. Now the API has the name, it has the age, and you have to update like some names and some ages. And if you're updating the original object, you will end up with some wrong data possibly. But if you create a new object and like update it, in that case, your original object remains as is, and then your new ones have the updated values. And to solve this, like to always, uh, and that is why I guess you would always see like objects should be immutable in React. Try to make immutable objects so that you don't end up with a lot of bugs. And we have like a lot of libraries which want you to do that. Whenever we talk about global state managers, Zustend or Redux, they force this philosophy that don't mutate your original object, create another version of it and update it. Okay, like that is the philosophy that they will push towards. If you update the original object, you will end up with like weird bugs that it's like no idea what's happening. Okay. uh okay, I hope that answers the question. Any other questions, anyone, before we move to the next question? 3B2. Okay, cool. No questions. Let's move to the next one. 3B2. Okay. So in this case, I am what I'm going to do, since I have actually prepared for these sessions, I have the snippet. I'll just it, update the snippet quickly. Okay. Uh, Question for you all. Uh, what's going to happen when I click on the button? Let me give it a class name of primary and a class name of secondary. Okay. So if I add this broken, what's going to happen? Okay. Look at the question. I am going to click on this add item. So it's similar to what we had previously. So that's why I also have the answers added directly. So I'm trying to put items.push cherry. So which means that the uh, array should update with cherry. And then I'm trying to do the set items on this items array. So ideally it should add cherry, but it doesn't. But if I do a spread operator, then we end up with this. Okay. And I did not click on it like multiple, because I clicked on it multiple times. I clicked on add broken multiple times. It remembers all those state updates. And when I go with add correct, it tries to update all of it. Okay. But yes, the idea is that hmm, even in terms of arrays, spread over the existing values and then kind of add the next value, the new value that you want. So I click on add broken, clicked add item, but nothing gets added. Clicked add item, nothing gets added. Clicked on the add item correct. The previous two are also getting added because I have them in my like array memory. And then the third one gets added. Add correct. There we go. Okay. Spread over the previous values and then add. That is, I guess, one of the key takeaways. Okay. So even with objects, because array is nothing but an object. We saw that in session one when we did type of an array. It's an object. So in terms of objects, always, always, always ensure that you spread over the previous value and then update or add the new value. So I guess that comes back to this question. Uh, should we always use like callback to mutate the previous state? Yes, you should. Okay. Either callback or like what I'm doing, like spreading over, if because I know it's an array. Mm. Any questions, anyone, on this? I think this was like pretty simple with respect to everything that we have done. And if you want to do it like from a callback perspective, what you can do is uh, I take the previous value and then I spread over the previous and add the next value. Perfect. I guess this should result in the same thing. I click on nope, nothing. I click on correct, 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 correct. Okay. So yeah, I guess that's majorly it. Any questions, anyone, about the callback, about the previous state, about mutating an object, how you should mutate an object. Always ensure that you spread over the previous value. Okay. So in this case, what was happening in the broken one? In the broken one, we are mutating here, but we are referencing referencing same object, and that's why it doesn't work. Okay, the set item doesn't work. So items.push is technically mutating in place. There is the same reference. React skips the re-render or render, re-render, whatever you call it. But when we do this format or in this like callback format, we are telling it that please create a new array. A new array means a new reference, and React is like, oh, I have a new reference, I need to re-render. Okay. Another way to check is add rendered 3b2. Okay, clear all, oops, clear all, rendered 3b2, add broken, click that item, but there's no render, clicked, no render, add correct, clicked this and added like rendered. Okay, so after every click there is a render because now React has a reference to a new object, and since there is a new object, which means new value means new render. Okay, uh so you will see this problem with push. Whenever you do items.push, you will see this problem with, let's say, pop. You will see this or problem with like sorting. You'll see this problem with reverse. You'll see this problem with splice. Okay, but you will not see this problem with when you use an array.map or if you use array.filter, because array.map returns a new array. Okay, it does not mutate the original one, it returns a new array by default. And since there's a new array, React is like, okay, I have a new reference, so I need to kind of re-render. Okay, any questions, anyone? We are like nearly towards the end of time, so I was thinking maybe we can stop right here if there are no questions, if there's nothing else from anyone, and then we can take a quick break and then come back after the break. Okay, so I presume no questions. You're welcome, absolutely. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is I am going to push this. Uh, I am force pushing to the previous commit itself, so we'll still have only like 6 commits, but it will have the new file changes of 3b2. Okay. Uh, what else? Guess that's it. Here you go with all the code. Oh, 4 stars. Thank you so much for everyone who liked this repository. Uh, one final thing before we end this session, feedback. So that should be quick as well. So here you go, link to the feedback of this session. This was session 3. Uh, Quick feedback, any constructive criticism, as I say, is always welcome. So this was part 3. I'm pretty sure yeah, you can type JS and React part 3. So this was part 3. You can provide rating, you can provide review. I'm not going to rate myself. Uh, yeah. And then in the next session, we'll come back and continue where we left off. The time right now is 13:53 for me. Uh, so we'll come back at 14:10. Uh, yeah, 14:10. Okay, so I'll start the session, but we'll not start it like I'll start the YouTube and Twitch stream, but we'll not actually like I'll not actually come back on screen until like 14:10, so that you have enough time to take a quick break, drink some water, and then continue. Cool. Uh, okay. So if there are no further questions, thank you so much, everyone. Ah, hello, Quackers and Cheese. Always hilarious. That username. Uh, okay, cool. We'll see you in a bit. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you soon for the part 4, the last section actually, in this series. Okay. Cheers. Bye bye.